Allah, Allah, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
Alright, so before I get started, I just want to disclaim that obviously religion in general and religion in Senegal are both very complex topics. I don't claim to know everything about this topic by any means, and obviously these videos are meant to be short and digestible, and I recognize I won't be able to fully delve into the entire history of religion in Senegal and fully give it justice, but I'm gonna do my best. So without further ado, let's talk about religion in Senegal. About 94% of religious folks in Senegal practice Islam. Another 4% practice Christianity, and then the remaining 1% practice a form of traditional African religion, specifically animism. Geographically speaking, obviously Islam is pretty spread out throughout the country. Christianity tends to be practiced on the coastal regions of Senegal in the south and also in big towns and cities. Whereas animism is pretty limited to the south and southeast regions of Senegal. So animism is defined as the attribution of a living soul to plants, inanimate objects, and natural phenomena. It's also the belief in a supernatural power that organizes and animates the material universe.
My community is Malinke, so I speak Malinke. I grew up in a village called Bantata. My parents and my whole community was animists in the past, and I was among the last generation of animists in my village because Islam just came when we were growing up in that area of our community. So they were all animists, and my family as well. So we have our beliefs, just trees, stones, like we consider them as God, as our gods. Like we have family shrines. The shrine for the whole village is supposed to be the god of the village, the protector of the whole village, the whole community. And yearly or every 6 months, we would do sacrifice to that god, in order to have good rainy season, etc., to protect people against sicknesses and epidemics, something like that. My family shrine was a tree called Jala. It's a Kaisedra in French. I remember when we were young, my granddad Musa would go, pray to God almost every week with us. And anytime also we have concern in our family, someone is sick or someone got in trouble, we always have to see, the Jalamba. We call it Jalamba. Jalamba means the big God, the powerful God. We owe him respect, etc., etc. So we were among that generation, and then while Islam is coming in the south of the country, in the Kedubu region, people trying to convert into Islam. And also French missionaries was in Kedubu, in our village also. They were the one who built the first schools. But if you have to attend that school, you have to convert into Christianity. So we went at that school, I think, for 1 or 2 years. From animist to Christian for a while, and then Islam also was entering into the community. So now many people are Muslim, but still there are some people who keep the tradition, who still animist, or even some people who said declare themselves as Muslim, still practices some animist practice. So they are Muslim, but they are practicing giving sacrifices, etc.
Now that we've learned a little bit about animism, let's talk about Christianity and Islam. The 4% of people in Senegal that practice Christianity primarily practice Roman Catholicism. According to BBC World Service, Christianity first arrived in northern Africa in the 1st or 2nd century AD. Once in North Africa, Christianity spread slowly west and east over the next couple of centuries. However, Christianity retreated in the 7th century AD because of the spread of Islam in the same areas. Much later, in the 15th century, the spread of Christianity picked up again with the arrival of the Portuguese in sub-Saharan Africa. Because the Portuguese would have arrived on the coast of West Africa, that can explain why the pockets of Christianity tend to exist on the coastal regions of Senegal and West Africa, whereas animist traditions tend to exist more on the interior side of Senegal because it would have taken much longer to spread Christianity further in the interior. However, where people had already converted to Islam, Christianity had very little success. So now that I've talked briefly about the history of Christianity in Senegal, I want to move on to Islam. Trans-Saharan traders from North Africa introduced Islam peacefully into West Africa by the 10th century. At that time, people were practicing traditional African religions. So as Islam spread throughout sub-Saharan Africa, the practice of Islam was shaped primarily by local traditions and beliefs. From the 1690s to the 1890s, a series of jihads, or holy wars, broke out, fundamentally altering the practice of Islam in West Africa forever. The Senegambia region in particular was affected by this period of struggle, which, while rooted in the rhetoric of Islamic reform, was shaped by numerous other social and economic factors. At that time, the transatlantic slave trade was coming to an end. There was more growth in legitimate commerce, and in general, there were eruptions of long-lasting tensions, which all led to a Muslim reform movement. This leads us to the colonial period of the Senegambia region, which starts about 1850 and leads us until 1960. At this time, when the French arrived, they encountered reform Muslim states that initially pushed back against French colonial rule, but eventually succumbed to the French's superior military and economic power. Throughout the centuries worth of time in the Senegambia region, several charismatic reform leaders started to gain a following and became very important to the history of Islam in the region. Many scholars write that these charismatic leaders were anti-colonialist people, that they were pushing against the colonial movement, that they were anti-French. But there is some disagreement in the historiography about this, because it actually was in their best interest to get along with the colonial movement so that they could marry their objectives with the states. So they would gain social, political, and economic benefits from working with the French. The charismatic leaders were very peaceful, cooperative, and practiced a lot of pragmatism. They were very cooperative with colonial leaders, regardless of if they were anti-French or working with them. This leads us to the decolonization of the Senegambia region. Islam in this region had socio-political and economic hegemony leading into independence. Because of this, the same is true today. Although Senegal is a secular society, Islam and religious figures have a lot of clout and therefore can sway a lot of decisions in the country.
Assalamu alaikum.
Islam in Senegal is not just a religion, but also a way of life. The vast majority of Senegalese Muslims practice Sufism. People that practice Sufi Islam seek divine love and knowledge through self-discipline. Senegal's Sufis specifically fall under one of the Sunni Muslim schools of jurisprudence. There are 5 essential practices or pillars to Islam that are practiced in Senegal. The first pillar is the belief in one true God and the belief that Muhammad was his messenger. The second pillar is praying at 5 specific times a day, facing the direction of Mecca. The third pillar is giving alms, or basically giving back to the needy and for communal purposes. The fourth pillar is fasting from sunrise until sunset during the holy month of Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. The fifth pillar is making the pilgrimage to Mecca. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and for those that are unable to make the pilgrimage, you are asked to contribute to another's pilgrimage. Okay, so a little bit earlier in the video, I mentioned that during the colonial period of the Senegambia region, there were charismatic leaders that arose to prominence in this area. And that's important today because those leaders are called marabouts. Marabouts are important to Islam in Senegal because the traditionally hierarchical societies in North and West Africa found it more natural to have religious leaders ascribed with divine power, providing a link between God and the common populace. Also important to Islam in Senegal is the concept of brotherhoods. So brotherhoods are essentially groups who follow the teachings of a particular marabout. The concept of brotherhoods in Senegal is extremely complex, not only for myself and other volunteers, but also for Senegalese people themselves. However, the most important takeaway is that these brotherhoods and these particular marabouts have a lot of clout in Senegal today. Political parties and alliances rely on some of these brotherhoods and marabouts to tell their followers to go vote and use their clout to influence how their followers vote. In exchange for helping political alliances in elections and whatnot, the government will publicly reinforce the power and clout of these brotherhoods and marabouts to keep the system going. Obviously, this can lead to what people might call corruption, but if you really think about it, it's not so different from accepting huge amounts of money for your political campaign from a company that's asking you to support a specific piece of legislation. Things like this happen all over the world, not just in Africa. And sometimes within these brotherhoods, there are actually even smaller groups of people that have joined together that specifically believe even more along the same lines and separate themselves even further within the brotherhood to distinguish their specific beliefs as opposed to the rest of the brotherhood. An example of this is the Baifal group within the Mouride brotherhood. Okay, so lastly, very important to the structure of Islam in Senegal are Quranic schools. Quranic schools are called daras, and they are run by a marabout who typically will accept about 20 to 30 students to his practice. These boys are referred to as talibe, which is a wolofized word derived from the Arabic words talib or Taliban. It just refers to someone who is a student and someone who is studying the Quran. Parents will send their boy children away to a Quranic school because they are under the understanding that they will be taken care of by the marabout, they will be taught how to become a man, and they will fervently study the Quran. Now, because each dara is obviously filled with a lot of mouths to feed, the marabouts likely do not have enough food to amply satisfy each child. Also, because one of the pillars of Islam is to give back to those in need, one of the daily lessons for these children is to go out each day to beg. So they're sent out to beg for food, for pocket change, so that when each child comes back to the dara, they'll pool their funding and stuff that they've received throughout the day, and each child will be able to eat and study in peace. Now, obviously, this system is not completely unproblematic in an objective sense, and actually the Economist recently published a piece in their magazine describing some really tragic situations that Taliban have endured throughout their experiences in Quranic schools. So I'll put the link to that below this video. Whew, okay, that's all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please don't be afraid to send them my way. And thanks for watching.
Now we have like animist people in Senegal, Christian people, Muslim, but we all live in peace and harmony. And some of the family you have at the same time Muslim people living with Christian people together in peace, and that's very beautiful. I really like that, and Senegal is Teranga.